A snow squall warning remains in effect for London, where upwards of 10 centimeters of snow fell overnight. We could get another 10 centimeters throughout the day today, and visibility will be a major concern, especially for drivers in rural areas outside the city.
These days, there are a lot of ways to check the weather forecast.
Loading the forecast into that.
So in order to get the most accurate weather forecast for the City of London, the Roads Department has its own meteorologist service providing predictions throughout the day.
Yes, we have a contracted meteorologist. It's the METO Group, which is formerly the Weather Network. They provide us with a forecast 3 times per day, 4 o'clock in the morning, noon, and at 8 o'clock. So it's 1 hour before each of the main shifts start. That information is conveyed to us through our weather portal, which you see here. It provides us with a forecast for the London and area. We also have links to the Environment Canada site, and we also have a road weather information system, which is the backbone to our system. So we have, with our road weather information system, we have 6 locations. So it's like 6 mini weather stations around the City of London, and they're in different quadrants of the city.
There is a station at Oxford and Hyde Park, Richmond Street at Fanshawe Park Road, Colonel Talbot Road, Highbury and Commissioners, and the one at Ted Early Park, just off Clark Road.
So this tower measures all the atmospheric. So at the top we have the wind speed and direction. There's a little radar up there that will measure the type of precipitation, whether it's rain, snow, sleet, hail. It does temperature, humidity, air pressure.
So with all that data gets pulled together and pulled into a custom forecast for London, which sometimes is a little bit different than the general forecast that you would receive through different media outlets. That's because they're trying to give you a regional one. We need to focus on the London forecast. So that additional data that we collect helps provide that.
Not only does the city measure readings from the air, it also gathers information from the ground and even from below the surface.
That's one of them. So that's the actual intelligent road sensor. It's about the size of a hockey puck. It's embedded right into the asphalt. You can see the saw cut where the cable is laid along the road, and that ties back into the main weather tower in the cabinet. There's little sensors in there. There's a little dish that detects the salt concentration in the water, so it knows the freezing temperature. It'll measure the surface temperature. There's probes that go a foot underground to measure the subsurface temperature. It'll measure the height of any water film that's on the road. And I think that's about it.
It shows us surface temperature and air temperature, and they are different. Oxford Street, air temperature is -6, but the road is 3.8. That's because there's a lot of traffic, and that helps the salt action working, and it'll start to bear off.
There's one more tool the city uses to gauge the weather, and that's by taking a look at what's going on outside.
Yeah, so that's a pole-mounted camera. It's polled every 10 seconds. It just takes a still, and those aren't archived for long time periods, but we do have about the last 8 hours or so. If we know something happened, we can look. So we have cameras look at all 5 stations, and it's pointed at the road, and it just gives our operators or the supervisors just a visual indication of the road condition at that time.
The meteorologists, they collect all the data and provide us with the weather forecast, and from there, the supervisors that are on the roads working the 24/7, that's the tool that they use to deploy equipment for the day. To monitor the condition, to know when to put people on standby, the weather forecast is a very important tool. That's the main tool that they use to make those decisions in winter control.
Armed with a detailed forecast for the next few hours, it's time to decide a course of action. If there is inclement weather on the way, the first step is to get the roads ready.
When a storm is forecasted, our first line of defense is we use a product called Agri-Melt, and we do what's called anti-icing if the conditions are appropriate. And that means if the air and road temperature is not forecasted to be below -12 degrees Celsius and not above 2 degrees Celsius. We apply, it's an all-natural agricultural blended product with sodium chloride. It's 80% sodium chloride and 20% desugared sugar beet molasses. The main reason we use it is it prevents the bond from forming between the ice and the snow.
The city has 8 anti-icing trucks ready 24 hours a day and 18 contractors on standby.
We have to understand how much and what type of product to put down and how much weather's coming in. So when you get to know what's going on first, and then you get into your trucks and load up accordingly.
And we use 2 types of equipment. One is a flusher and the other one is the actual sander to apply this to our main roads, what we classify as class 1 and class 2 roads.
Just like you hear them on the radio all the time, we get on our mains and bus routes first and then get into the backs.
On average, the city goes through about 2 million liters of agrimelt a year, which by itself can be a big benefit.
So it's a frost prevention measure that we use. Instead of applying salt, we anti-ice.
But the city also mixes the agrimelt with all of the salt it spreads, and the city has a lot of salt.
Well, the amount of salt that we have would probably fill a school.
Like top to bottom?
Top to bottom.
London gets its salt from a mine in Windsor and stores 24,000 tons of it around the city. It's the same stuff you would find in your salt shaker at home, just not quite as fine.
What's going to happen is, before it gets refined any further, so it becomes a table salt, we'll get the natural products right from the mine. But it's all salt. It's all salt, and then they treat that, and it's cured, and then it becomes table salt content.
Salt works by lowering the freezing point of water, and the salty water that comes in contact with ice begins the melting process. But it's only effective to a certain temperature.
Dry salt is effective until -12 degrees Celsius. This lowers the temperature and we can use salt up to or down to -21 degrees.
Well, what happens is the liquid material enables the bond to break quicker, and it reacts to the pavement a lot sooner.
So the brine helps that salt activate right away and work immediately. Not only that, at a lower temperature too. All right. Let's go have some fun.
The city stores its sand, salt, and brine at 5 different locations throughout London, where operators can load up with the necessary products to prep the roads.
But this one here is particularly nice because we're out of the weather when we're gonna fill up, sorry. Okay, so we're gonna load up with brine, and we're gonna put a load of material on, and we're gonna go out and salt the roads. First off, we gotta let our sander unit know that we're hooking up to fill up. So there's a few items we gotta put together. We're gonna tell we're gonna hook the computer up to let it know that we're gonna fuel it up. Plug it in. I'm gonna turn my computer on. I'm actually telling the computer there's a command coming up. Do its job. So then we get our brine, unhook the cam lock. So I'm nice and firm, tight. I'm gonna turn on the unit to let it flow in. I'm gonna turn on the hose. So I press start. Oh. And I must be full. Oh, there we go. There's 3 tanks in the truck. There's 2 saddle tanks and 1 at the front. There's my sight tube right there. But that sight tube is letting me know how full it is with the 2 tanks. There's a 3rd tank that's even higher than that. Okay, so shutting off our valves. We're going to shut off the main valve. We got everything shut off. Now there's still going to be a little bit in the hose. Again, it's not toxic, but you really don't want to get this on you. So a little bit will come down. There, everything's ready to go.
Each sander truck can hold around 10 tons of salt and 4,200 liters of brine to anti-ice around 60 lane kilometers of road.
And that's really helpful because we do cover over 800 lane kilometers per anti-icing session.
Good stuff.
A flusher truck can hold over 13,000 liters of brine, but no salt.
So now the computer thinks there's road speed. So I can tell the computer in the cab where to put the bulk of the salt or sand coming out. And as the product is coming in to the spray pattern of the brine, it's getting pre-wet. So the brine is attaching itself to the product itself.
The main objective here is to activate the salt. So the reaction occurs immediately, the salt starts working, and it reduces the bounce and scatter loss that we have. So the majority of the salt is staying at the crown of the road and bleeding off to the curb rather than the salt bouncing off into the gutter and not being effective.
We're ready to go.
With the truck loaded, Scott heads out to anti-ice the Oxford Street Bridge. Bridges freeze up very quickly because the condensation from the river mixes with the frigid air and the metal in the bridge.
It'll freeze up in no time. If the conditions are right.
From a control panel in the cab, Scott can control how much brine is spread, and even the direction it is sprayed. This allows for an even dispersion of the product.
I'm going to put it on right here. So we're anti-icing. The wind might have created a little bit of blowing to the right, so I'm going to give it 1 arrow to the left. You see it coming out there a little bit more. We're doing no more than 40 kilometers an hour. That's unfortunately one of the holdups with traffic when they see one of our trucks out, is we're going slow, but we're going slow for a reason. If I went any faster, the plume of brine would be in the air and it would drift away and wouldn't do what we want it to do. So speed is imperative, or low speed is imperative.
The bridge is now ready to prevent the weather from bonding to it. But if the snow continues to fall and 5 centimeters accumulates, that's when the plows are called into action. Ray Palmer has been driving a snowplow for over 20 years and is very comfortable behind the wheel. He has also seen a lot of changes to the city over the years.
Well, I'll tell you, the major changes are the roads and the traffic. A lot more traffic, but also they've changed the road system quite a bit. I guess as the city expands, they have to do different things with the traffic, and of course that makes it a little more difficult for us as well.
The city is divided into 62 areas or beats, and each plow operator is assigned to one of them.
I'm just going to put the wing down for you, show you in here. You always put the heel down first, and then the front. And you can see, you've got to watch everything, like you can't see much out of there. That's why we have somebody on the wing usually, just in case there's something that we might not see. never know what's under that snow sometimes. And you have to clear the catch basins. You got to come out, see this marker. You got to be able to get around those. I'll bring it up here for the moment. You got to bring the front up first, and then the heel, just so you don't dig it in. And it's got to come up fairly slow as well. If you have the revs going up, that wing will come right into the mirror. It has some spring to it, so it'll flex around a little bit, that type of thing. And I'm going to put it down here. I'm going to try this little turning lane here. And you can see how it comes up out there. You can feel the bump up against the curb when I get in there far enough.
The plow's main objective is to clear the main streets within 6 hours after the snow stops falling.
And then the second priority would be our bus routes, and of course going into the back streets after that. So you have a little area that you have to do as per the beat sheet, and you're required to have that all done within a shift, as long as the weather allows. Sometimes we get a lot of snow at night where they have to keep us out on the mains at all times, and you really don't get a chance to get into the backs, and that's what makes it seem so late that we're getting there, when in fact we're maintaining the main roads, and we certainly have to keep up with that first. So you have ambulance, fire, police, all of that, and of course the public needs to get around the next day, so you've got to keep that good and clear, and you have a little more time to get into the backs after that.
If 10 centimeters of snow accumulates, the plows start on the residential routes, which make up 2/3 of the city's road network.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop everything here, and we're going to try a city street. So now you can see we try and keep the catch basins open, because of course you can get some flooding after if you get some mild weather, but also we have to keep it just tight to the curb, just so that everything, will run smoothly after. And this is where it gets a little interesting. You can see that this truck is parked, he's okay here, but it's very tight for myself. Now, in this case, I'm going to have to pull the wing up. And it's hard to get by some of these vehicles, nor do we don't want to hit them, and they're just difficult to get around. And in some cases, if you have one on each side of the street, you can't get by at all, and it just makes it more difficult to plow. So now I'm going to do a corner here just to give you an idea of how tight we have to get in just to get around. Watching for traffic, checking everything out, but again, trying to keep tight on the corner so that we can clear the snow properly. That just gives you a little bit of an idea just how tight we have to get on some of the corners. Not always easy again, because it's slippery and depending on how much snow there is.
One of the more time-consuming jobs in the residential areas is clearing cul-de-sacs, and the city has 720 of them.
Now I'm taking you into this court. It's also known as a bulb. So we come in. It gets a little tight in some of them. And you can't always get around the bulb so easily if it's slippery. So we'll try and see what we can do here. They're quite slippery today. Have to get around. We're almost around this one, so that I can hopefully tuck everything in and make a better job of it. Gets a little tight. Here's another thing you have to watch out for. There's trees, as you're coming around. It's very time consuming when you get into a bulb like this. This one is a little small. It's a little more difficult to do. Some of the other bulbs, if they're a bit larger, it's a little easier to get around. But we'll do the best we can.
The city aims to have all 3,500 kilometers of roads plowed within 24 hours after the snow stops falling. But the roads aren't the only things that need to be cleared. There is close to 1,500 kilometers of sidewalk that needs to be plowed as well. That's where Derek McAllister comes in. He drives one of the city's trackless series sidewalk plows that utilizes some unique capabilities.
Well, this is obviously the front plow mount, and with this, this is probably the most favorite blade of all the operators that use them. It's called a 5-way blade, which means that it can be, manipulated to whatever job you're trying to perform. So on a day like today where we're just trying to move snow, we're trying to get snow out of the way quickly, most guys will run it in the V pattern right here, and that pushes the snow off in the way. Depending upon what we're doing, this blade here can actually flare out and tucking in corners, backing up, and moving stuff out of the way. So it's a little bit nicer. You can do a lot more with it than just the standard V blade. And obviously, it's a little more comfortable when you're banging into things. It has these heavy-duty springs here that give it a little. It's a little less impact on the unit itself, so it absorbs a little bit more of the shock. The steering system is not your standard, so we actually steer the unit by moving the front and back, on a swivel here. So that can make steering tricky in tight quarters. In fact, most of the time, if you do get it stuck, it'll be because you're too close to something and you just can't manipulate your way out. So it's a little bit different than running a car or a truck. So getting up in here, this is the joystick. Obviously, this controls your attachments, summer and winter time attachments. You can see this is the forward and reverse button, which basically takes that out of play. You can use either or, but it's way easier to use your thumb going forward and backwards. And obviously here's your acceleration pedal and brake pedal. But anything that you're using is all on this stick here. So yellow runs the left side, red runs the right side, and then of course your main lift is here. So everything's on the joystick, which makes it a little bit easier.
Once the 3-ton trackless plow hits the pavement, there are many things Derek needs to keep a lookout for.
So obviously, driveways, vehicular traffic we have to be aware of. Pedestrians are obviously a major concern, but it's the unforeseen hazards that you can't see underneath the snow. So water shutoffs, gas shutoffs, uneven cement, that gives you a little bit of a jolt. And obviously people, once they've started shoveling their driveway, don't like you come along and wreck it, so there's always that element. This is a huge help right here. These plow markers, if everyone did one plow marker on their property, there'd probably be very little sod damage or damage of any kind. This is a huge help to us because there's some nights when the snow is falling so hard you really can't see where the sidewalk is. And if I'm off just a little bit, then it's going to tear at your grass. And if your grass is growing over the sidewalk, it's for sure going to hit it. There's nothing I can do about it. We really don't like it when there's turf damaged in our beats. It's a point of pride for a lot of guys. We don't like it, and we try to avoid it at all costs. But sometimes it is just inevitable. It's going to happen. So here we got it. So at this point, what I'll do is I'll just tidy this corner up, just quick, so you can kind of have a look. You can kind of see, get an idea what we deal with when we're doing this. So obviously lots of traffic and cars you got to be aware of. And it's been my experience, they don't like to wait. So you really have to kind of pick your spots. And this would be an average corner that you'd probably do this cleanup at. So you can see there's lots to kind of watch out for. Lots of traffic going in a lot of different directions. getting down to Southdale or you get into major roads, and that gets to be obviously a little more hazardous, just with traffic and foot traffic and everything else. So again, the operator that was here in this beat kind of just shot down the middle here. So you can always just widen these out when you get an opportunity. So here's a good example here where we've got some kids just up the way here, so they're naturally curious, especially when they see something like this. They don't shy away too much. In fact, they like to try to get a little bit closer and really check it out. So you always make friends. Hung back pretty good there. And at this time of the day, like I say, normally you're kind of going through your secondaries, but you can see how the blade really peels it up, especially this time of day when it's a little bit milder. It really does a nice job of peeling it up. And you can see all the way up to the end here, where we get to the other end of this, where the street ends. You can see this guy here, he's even gone the extra mile and done them on a straight line, which no sidewalk is a straight line. So it's always good to have these little markers here as well. Really beneficial. And so this gives you a real good idea of how much room we have on either side. So I'm almost, my blade's almost in the middle of the sidewalk, or as middle as I can get. So I've got maybe a couple inches on this side and maybe 4 inches on this side. And if the grass is grown over at all, then that obviously makes it a little more challenging. And if it has grown over, as soon as we get in underneath that, it just tears it and flips it right over to the other side. So you might only take 2 or 3 inches off the sidewalk, but you're going to take off probably 12 inches of sod, just because that's how it tears up. It's unavoidable. The plow markers are so beneficial for us, especially going around corners and stuff and marking out where they are. But at the end of the day, if the grass is growing over top, there's really nothing we can do. It's just part of the process. It's impossible to see without markers where the sidewalk is. Everyone says, well, it's a straight line. It's not a straight line. So just know that everyone that works for the city, when they're driving these, the last thing we want to do is turf damage. The last thing we want to do is have someone shake their fists at us or get angry because of it, because we certainly don't do it on purpose. So
There are a couple of constants for the equipment operators. There will always be snow, and it will need to be dealt with.
We're just pushing the road off, snow off the road to make it safe. That's what we're doing. And I love it. Yeah, it's great.
just knowing that I was there looking in the rearview mirror, check it out. Yep, I've cleared off that sidewalk and people are able to use it. People are able to get access to where they have to go. So
there's going to be traffic in the morning. People need to get to work, to wherever they need to get to, and it just stays on your mind to get the job done.
The other thing they know is that after a hard day's work, there is more snow waiting for them in the city and at home.
I drive on a back street. I have a laneway that has to be shoveled. You know, I'm just like everybody else. If we could snap our fingers and get rid of the snow, it'd be easy. But we can't do that. So that's what it's the struggle, is what the public should know, that they have to be patient and the snow goes slow.
I leave here, I'm dog tired, I've been woke up at 2 in the morning, I've had no sleep, but I still have to go home and have to clear my front driveway from the road plow guys, and I got to clear my sidewalk too. So we still have to do the same thing that they're doing, just at a later date, so to speak, or a later time.
Well, I do sometimes, but I'll tell you, I have a very great wife who gets out there, very athletic, and my driveway's done most of the time when I get home. She does a great job, and I'm a very lucky guy.